Tired, so tired, overtired.
Hello, I am Brett Terpstra. You are listening to Overtired. It was a tribute to the Queen. I figured
I see.
I figured I'd do a
power.
Monty Python tribute to the Queen.
And I'm waving silently in her.
Yeah, very slowly, silently, exactly.
So anyway, I'm Brett Terpstra. You're listening to Overtired. I'm here as always with Jeff Severns Gunsel. Christina Warren has the week off. She got her vaccine and is recovering from a couple nights of insomnia that I think we can all relate to. We have a special guest this week. We are joined by Rabbi Eric Linder out of Athens, Georgia, home of REM. How's it going, Eric?
It's good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah,
it's good to, and I'm meeting you for the first time. I've heard you on Brett's podcast, but
yeah, and nice to meet you, Jeff. And the B-52s and Klezmer Local 42.
God,
yes, Eric is in a band called Klezmer Local. Is it 42 or 52?
42.
What does the 42 refer to?
It's just the lead of the band wanted a name that sounded like a labor union, so he just.
What was the band Thinking Fellers Union back from the 90s? There was another band that had a good
Street Sweepers.
Oh, I don't know.
No. Wow, that's a great name. It's a great name.
Oh, I have a note filled with band titles. Like,
oh man,
oh yeah.
I have like dozens.
That is the hardest.
That's the hardest thing in
band.
the world. That's like, it's amazing any band survives naming itself.
So I had a band in high school that was called Moon Man Auto, which isn't a horrible name, but it came about because we had spent weeks arguing over what we should call our band. And eventually we had a chemistry book, and the authors of the book were Moon, Man, and Otto. And we're like, fuck it. That's our name.
It's like an academic paper reference.
Man with two ends, and we kept that. We kept it like straight up Moon Man Otto.
That's amazing. That's good. Like my wife and I were reminiscing of the heyday of the very long band name, like I Love You But I Have Chosen Darkness. Or there was a band which is an amazing name. There was a band in Minneapolis called Seagulls Screaming Kiss Her, Kiss Her.
Or Godspeed You Black Emperor.
That's the one I was just thinking of. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean,
I fell asleep at that show.
Well, that's actually nice sleeping music in my
opinion. It is. I got those the seats at front row behind the glass up by the bar.
Ooh. Yeah.
What did I just say? At First Ave.
Yeah.
Did I say First Ave? That sounded weird in my head.
You didn't say A Club, I don't think, but I could be tired.
At First Ave, up behind the plexiglass on the balcony level.
Yep.
And I just sat there in a bar stool and fell asleep, and it was a pleasant nap. I can't complain. I like Godspeed, just boring.
The idea of like napping at shows is we've really missed a chance culturally to make that a norm. Like, I just feel like I've fallen asleep. I love going to see classical music, and I will often fall asleep at some point, and it's the nicest little nap in the world.
An expensive one, but
super expensive. Well, I'm awake for most of it,
right?
But they always play a couple things you didn't come for,
That's right.
Like any band.
It's pleasant to wake up and realize you're in the middle of a show you wanted to see. It's a great way to wake up.
That is. Max Richter has the composer has an album called Sleep. That's the actual composition is like 24 hours long, and every couple of years it's performed. And the idea is you do go and you sleep to it, which is just like awesome.
I feel like it's in an app. Literally called Sleep. I could be wrong.
There is actually an app for it. Yeah, totally.
I think we need to add this to the show notes. Max Richter,
Sleep. Yeah. I mean, I just took a late morning nap to it because I was feeling a little under the weather. It's my totally my napping music. Anyway, Eric, people who have listened to Brett's podcast have met you before, but I was wondering if you could kind of introduce yourself.
Surely, yeah. So I'm a rabbi in Athens, Georgia. I've been here 10 years. decided to be a rabbi. The joke I tell people is when I realized I would not be the saxophonist for James Brown, I decided to be a rabbi. But
so binary,
right? It was one or the other. No, nothing else. I started college as a music major on saxophone, and I grew up what I'll call fairly mainline Reform Judaism. So Reform Judaism is a denomination of Judaism that leans more to the liberal side. And I was active in youth group, and I made friends in Hebrew school. I went to undergrad at University of Florida and got involved in some Jewish activities there with Hillel and other things like that. But it was really when I went to a summer camp, which is actually just about an hour from Athens, near a small town called Helen, Georgia. Have either of you been there by chance?
No.
It's a weird little town. It's a very touristy. It looks like a Bulgarian dollhouse has come to life, and you're walking around in it.
Awesome.
Like Google pictures of Helen, Georgia. You'll see what I mean. Okay. And lots of like fudge places and funnel cakes and like that.
Yeah. Okay. I get it. A picture's starting to form.
There you go. And so there's a Jewish summer camp very close to there that I went to as a counselor, and that kind of started this journey for me. And now I've been a rabbi 16 years, I think.
16 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. Started in Omaha, Nebraska at a synagogue there. Had a wonderful experience.
I have most of my working life is spent in Omaha.
Oh, funny.
So where in Omaha?
Oh, right. I mean, right in the heart of it. I was in Dundee.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and still have lots of good friends there, and keep in touch with folks. And then I moved here to Athens, and like 2 weeks after I moved here, I met the woman that would be my wife, which is hysterical because Athens is the smallest Jewish community I've ever lived in. So like it is. I mean, I went to rabbinical school in New York City, and then Omaha has about 5,000 Jews. And then Athens, nobody, if you don't count students, it's probably 500 or so. I mean, nobody really knows, of course. And, I had this vision of being on J-Date and like driving to Atlanta, once or twice a week, going on these blind dates. And I was not excited about that prospect. And, I met Emily through a congregant at a retirement party. And now we have 2 kids, and that's it.
Man. That's awesome. Was it one of those you need to meet my neighbor or my daughter kind of?
No, she walked into this party, and I asked the person who retired his wife. I said, "Lauren, do you know who this woman is?" She said, "Yes, and she's recently single and Jewish." And stereotypically, my wife does not present as looking Jewish. She's tall, blonde hair, blue eyes. So,
yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So you're like, yes. Okay. Yes.
I know, right.
The signals were not there, but now I know. Where did you go to school in New York?
It's called Hebrew Union College is the seminary, and it's right by NYU downtown, 4th and Broadway. For folks who know the city.
My wife went to Union Theological Seminary up near Columbia.
Oh, sure.
And took some classes across the street. At the what is the school across the street?
JTS.
It's the JTS, yeah. Jewish Theological
Seminary.
So
what did she take there? Like what kind of stuff?
She was studying theologies of evil and also feminist theology. She likes to party,
Well, it's like my wife's specialty is PTSD and sexual trauma. It's like,
Yeah. It's hard. So I can picture already the books that lay around the house. Like that was, I remember when we had our first child living in New York City when she was still in school. And it was almost like he was waiting for her to finish this paper on evil. It was literally just a paper on evil. And she had a book laying around that just the biggest word you could see on it was just evil, and she's like waiting for this baby to come. And it was like, as soon as she handed in that paper, she started going into labor, and within hours we were in a taxi going to the hospital. I was like, just needed that evil paper to get.
That's right. Just get it out. Get it out.
You don't want to bring that into the whole labor process. Anyhow, that's awesome.
Yeah, theodicy is one of my favorite 10-cent words.
That's a good 10-cent word. That's a 25-cent word. But so you're a rabbi, and I'm looking at you, and like Brett, you have framed black and white pictures and musical instruments behind you.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so music has always been huge for me. I honest to God remember when I was in 6th grade and going to it was some open house for people interested in band, and I picked out the saxophone purely because it had a lot of buttons, and I liked the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And I've always found joy in listening to music, learning about music, certainly playing it. It's a huge part of what draws me to Judaism, what both drew me in, and in terms of, I guess, how I present Judaism, if that makes sense, through music and through musical teachings. So yeah, I have this studio in my basement. It's as my wife likes to make fun. It's one of my man caves that she's allowed me. But yeah, it's a lot of fun down here. A lot of electronic keyboards and drums and stuff like that.
What's the other cave?
So the other cave
Your study?
So next to it is, it could be my study. It's become a bourbon room just to my left. That's
Awesome.
it's the combination of pandemic and children. Started that. And then I have a whole video game. Well, it's the general playroom, but
all right, hold on. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the video game room.
Wait, I want to point out one thing because nobody can see it, but the lighting in the man cave you're currently in with all the musical instruments, you got some maybe sconce lighting going on. It's gorgeous. You have the best lit man cave I've ever seen.
It's funny that you say that, Brett, because a lot of bulbs they're all BR30 like floodlights.
Burn out.
But literally there's only 3 on because they're all burnt out. The electrician was here last week. And
beautiful.
This is speaking of stereotypical Jewish guy that doesn't know anything about, electronics. I have the electrician here thinking it's some complicated mistake with wiring. He's like,
yeah,
these bulbs are bad.
Oh, right.
Thanks.
Right.
Here's $150 to tell me that. Thank you.
Yeah. That's amazing. And a little bourbon.
That's right.
That's incredible. Okay, so you have a video game room. It is. How old are your kids?
2.5 and 6 months.
Okay, so this is truly your video game room. Let's hear about it.
But it will be theirs. It will.
Oh, sure, of course.
There's a legacy involved.
It's under that you build it, right?
100%.
Yeah, I build this future for my children. So what would I see if I walk in there?
Oh yeah, I mean Xbox, PlayStation. I've been playing with about the Philips Hue bulbs.
Yes.
So I have a sync box. So if I'm really feeling geeky, I can sync the lights to the TV and the games.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have the PlayStation 5?
I do.
Me too. But nobody else. It's
I know.
My poor teenagers are like, I want to play with people on this thing, but nobody has it.
Yeah, so we're in, Jeff. We'll definitely
let's do it. You got lucky. Got lucky. Do you mess with any vintage video game stuff?
Like
retro gaming, either just any interpretation of that.
Yeah, so I have emulators. I actually have an arcade cabinet that I got for myself.
That's the question.
It was some sort of. It was
If
either a
you have
birthday
an
gift or
cabinet.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. I hold on. I'm going to grab something.
Yeah, tell me everything.
While he's running off, have you seen the GoV lighting stuff?
No.
It's super affordable compared to Hue, and you can hook it up to a microphone and have rope lights and backlights all dance to music. It's actually really good. I would
GoV?
check GOVEE.
Okay. Look it up.
So I built this for my kids out of a ancient electronics project box that I got at this amazing surplus store called Axeman in town. And everybody, I'm just holding up kind of it's a joystick with a bunch of buttons, and it actually
looks like a Street Fighter.
It has that look, and it has a 7-inch screen that is actually normally hooked up to it, but I'm upgrading it
to a 10-inch.
No, I'm upgrading the electronics inside and putting speakers in and stuff.
So is it a Raspberry Pi or?
Yeah, it has a Raspberry Pi in it. I'm totally obsessed with them. Anyway, well, you have a lot of fun rooms in your house. That's great.
Yes. So that's something really else amazing. That right when I got here, met now a very dear friend who's one of the heads of our band, and found out I played sax, and I sat in with the band, and And it's great because there's obviously overlap culturally with Judaism, but, a lot of congregants come to our shows, and it's just a nice way to integrate with the community and be involved in the music scene and all that stuff.
That's awesome. So how did you and Brett meet?
We met because I annoyed him on Twitter, I think. I just had
that sounds about right.
like OmniFocus questions, automation.
You hired me.
Apple script.
Like
Awesome.
you hired me as a consultant for some of your crazier scripting stuff. And eventually, like, it got to a point where I was like attending your temple services and I wasn't charging you anymore.
Yeah, Jeff, be careful. Well, yeah, I mean, I think I was asking you all these questions and you were so nice and responding. And I was like, you know what? Rather than like one at a time and, annoying you at all hours, can I hire you for an hour?
Yeah.
Pay you for this expertise.
I basically did the same thing.
That is the way you worm your way into Brett's life is
that's how you end up on his podcast.
Paid consultation.
Yeah.
I also like the idea that AppleScript is like the gateway to converting to Judaism. Like, I mean, you all know how someone says they're doing AppleScript. You know what they mean.
But there's a band title in there somewhere.
That's right. That's
going back.
Well, should we do our mental health corner?
Yeah, let's do that, and then we'll hit a sponsor, and then I kind of want to talk about like an atheist attending temple.
Perfect. Sounds good. And it doesn't have to be how is your mental health. It can be a mental health check-in of any sort. You want to start? Are you feeling really brave, Eric?
I mean, I can start. I've listened to y'all a few times. I have a sense of what's happening, even regardless of my mental health. So we're actually in a super interesting time in the Jewish calendar. We're right before our Jewish high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah actually starts Sunday. And the month prior to Rosh Hashanah, it's called Elul, is meant as a time for introspection and really kind of thinking about your life and your priorities. And what a lot of people do, myself included, is try and have either a meditation or a reading for every day of Elul that either focuses on an aspect of introspection or forgiveness, which is another huge theme. And so in many ways, mental health, in kind of capital letters, is what this month is about. As a rabbi, though, I don't know that my mental health is as balanced as Judaism kind of would want it to be, because I'm trying to promote, it's like a physician heal thyself kind of situation where I'm, giving it to the congregation, hopefully, but not necessarily always taking it for myself. And so I've really been, especially as Rosh Hashanah comes closer and closer, I've really tried to kind of take those themes to heart. And it's different with kids too. Like just thinking about time and how, we're always in a rush to get to the next thing, or certainly I am. And like my 2.5-year-old, if he wants to jump, doesn't matter that dad has an appointment or, or it's lunchtime or whatever. So that's kind of where I am and what I've been thinking about in terms of mental health lately.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a framework.
It is. And the other thing too is like without a framework, people don't do it. Like that's why there's apps. That's why there's like all of these methodologies, because it helps.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny you mentioned the kids. Like I have 2 teenage boys. But when the first one was born, I remember having this, just in those hours after, having this distinct feeling that I could see further, and almost like this opening of a void or something. Like void sounds like a negative connotation, but like I felt like I could see further beyond just whatever kind of short-sightedness I had been living my life with up until having a child, right? But then
I have heard that description. Yeah.
But really quickly it becomes you can't see past your fucking nose, right? And I think that's such a funny juxtaposition.
Absolutely, that's a great
Like it'll never happen to me. I've taken surgical precautions to ensure that I never become a father. But when I hear people talk about like the perspective change that happens when you have a kid, Like I find myself very curious. Like I've always considered myself too selfish to have children. I am too obsessed with like figuring out my own life that I don't feel qualified to inflict my insecurities, I guess, my lack of direction onto another life form. But the response I get from people who are happy parents is often like, none of that matters once you have the kid. Like everything changes, your perspective changes, what you thought was selfishness then gets directed towards a new life form. That's curious. I believe that could be a situation.
Yeah, 10 years of high triage will definitely knock the selfishness out of you.
And to flip it too, I mean, I think there is not in a negative way. I have a whole thing on selfishness gets a bad rap sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but in a way, your children is an extension of yourself. So it almost like it's selfishness in that way too. Like they are a part of you. So it's not like you're giving up something to be with them. Like it's the same thing in a way.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. Having kids can also be the ultimate selfish act, right? Like,
I mean, like look at, overpopulation and the planet and the world. I mean, I don't want our mental health to now go down thinking of like,
if you want a list of all the reasons not to have kids, we can do that.
Absolutely. It's very easy. Very
too late for me. I can go. I am just really benefiting from probably my 8th or 9th week with a new therapist. And after having one for the same therapist for probably 3 years, she retired. And I've mentioned this on the show before, but it is an incredible thing generally in life, it's an incredible thing to watch a good professional do what they do. But it's a really incredible thing to be held by the sort of skills of a professional in the case of therapy in a way that in this case, I'm noticing after years, after decades of kind of circling around some of the same things, all of a sudden I feel like I'm standing somewhere different with those things. I haven't healed from any issues, not that healing is a final state, right? But I've just been so grateful to have this particular therapist at this particular time in my life. And is a great argument for why we try so hard to find the right therapist in the first place, because it doesn't always work. I've had to let one go before, but it just is an amazing thing. Now, that said, she only does online therapy. And I realized that after 8 weeks or so, it is strange to not have been in a physical space with a person that you've shared this much with,
My therapist is online as well, and that's the only way I know him. Yeah.
Yeah. And like she's technically savvy, thank God. My retired therapist, the first probably 4 to 6 appointments of COVID, I was doing tech support for 20 minutes of the hour, and I was not actually in a good place. So I was just like, can you figure this out some other fucking time?
Oh my God. I can so see that.
She's like, well, I'm just not hearing it now. And and then she got a kitten at the same time, and the kitten was jumping on. It was just like, it was insane. Anyway, just grateful for that. And as always, recommending, if you feel like you've never been to therapy or like it's been too long, it's so worth looking into it and trying to find a match. So,
ooh, I can follow that up.
All right, hit me.
So, okay, I recently got a new therapist. I got a therapist. This is my first real therapist.
Okay.
And if you had talked to me last week after my weekly, like right now, I'm going every week. And if you had talked to me last week, I would have been a lot more skeptical, because I went to see him in person. Like I have the option to do either telehealth or in-person visits. So I was like, I'm going to try it in person. And I showed up, and the session ended up being like, mostly we talked about like media, our favorite movies and Neil Gaiman and adaptations of comic books into movies, and it was an intriguing conversation, but it's not what I ever thought therapy would be about. And he was like, yeah, no, it's good to just, establish a personal base, like groundwork, to get to know each other. So I was like, all right, I'm going to let this one go. I'll pay for a shoot the shit session with this guy, and we'll see what happens. And then this week, I went back to telehealth just due to schedule, and holy shit, like I learned so much this week. Like my therapist, he likes to explain things. Like I expected to spend a lot more time talking about myself, and have him nod and write in a notebook, just based on what I've seen of therapy and movies. But he has a lot of input on what I'm feeling and what I'm going through. And he's actually, given he's younger than me, he actually has a lot, especially when it comes to bipolar, ADHD, religious trauma. Like he knows his shit, and he proved that this last week. The big takeaway for me was he suggested, so I quit drinking officially 2 years ago, had some relapses, and I was framing them as failures. Like just the term relapse in and of itself is a loaded term. And like with heroin, I have good reason not to do heroin. Like I ruined people's lives with my heroin addiction. Alcohol, I've never hurt anybody. Like maybe I got in a fight once when I was a teenager, because I was drunk, but I've never hurt anybody. I've never stolen from anybody. I've never even like emotionally injured, as far as I know, someone because I was drunk. So I don't have this strong, like, I can never drink again. It will hurt people. I shouldn't drink again because I know I'm not super responsible with it. And it's not healthy. Like it's bad for my teeth. It's bad for my liver, whatever. And so he wants me to attempt to reframe my relationship with alcohol. And like the times that I have quote unquote relapsed, I've had a bottle of whiskey in the basement, and I sneak it, and I use some mouthwash and go about my life. And maybe don't sneak alcohol in the basement, maybe join my girlfriend for a glass of wine when she's having a glass of wine, and maybe attempt to drink socially and responsibly, and not hide a bottle of whiskey in the basement. So it was a great conversation. Like I'm gonna attempt a new paradigm. If it doesn't work out, if it proves that I just cannot be responsible, then we look at more drastic, like complete abstinence. But it was like he saw me in a way that, like, if you go to a 12-step program, you go in, you just by showing up there, you're admitting you have a problem, and the only option is 100% abstinence. And the way it's framed is not necessarily helpful to people that might be in more of a gray area. So it was enlightening. I'm looking forward to this reframing of my relationship with alcohol as an attempt. Maybe AA is right. Maybe I don't have a chance in hell of ever drinking responsibly. Maybe not. Gonna find out. Gonna test the waters. So all this to say, like, the guy has really, he proved himself to me in the last session that he sees me as a person. He understands where I'm coming from. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to my next session with him.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great.
That is so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, failure. I feel like it's like a good therapist helps, at least in my case, my therapists, when they've been good, have always been so good at stopping me when I'm clocking myself upside the head and making me kind of open the fist. And
yeah,
you know.
so he asks me, what's the antonym of shame? And my answer was pride. Like, the opposite of shame is pride. But he's like, no, it's compassion. The opposite of shame is compassion.
Oh,
and I was like, holy shit. Yeah. Like, the things that I have figured out, especially in relationship to my ADHD, is compassion. Like, understanding myself in a way that lets me feel compassion for that kid, you know, like to look back and say, life was rough for this kid, and I feel compassion for him. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't a failure. He deserves compassion. And same with like religious trauma and all of the shit that I've gone through with that, compassion, like that's kind of the key word from my last session is just compassion, especially self-compassion, but that translates to compassion for others. Like, how can you possibly exist in the world if you paint everyone in black and white terms, good and evil, and have no compassion for people's stories, for where people are coming from? So that was actually kind of an eye-opening thing for me.
Yeah, and that goes so much toward Jewish teaching too, especially during this time. I mean, it really does. And again, not trying to convert anyone, but just the resonance there of, you know, the Judaism, and I mean, the high holidays as a microcosm of that is all about us moving forward. And, you know, my wife, we were talking before the show, she's a therapist. Her specialty is cognitive behavioral. So like your therapist, Brett, a lot of talking. You know, it's not the Freudian of like, yes, tell me about your dreams.
And how does that make you feel?
Right, exactly. But, you know, the one thing that her and I talk about all the time when I have, I have what we coin ennui sometimes, where it's just like the middle of the day and like I'll have a few hours free and I just don't feel like doing anything. And, or I'll feel regret that I'm not doing anything. And, you know, we talk about all the time that like, you go down that rabbit hole where then you just feel regretful or shame. And to use your word, when you feel compassion, you're motivated maybe to do something productive or good in the world. And that's what Judaism is all about, is taking our quote unquote mistakes or what seem like failures or places where we didn't hit the mark. And rather than beat ourselves up about it, just do better. Just starting today, just do better.
As a bit of backstory, Eric and I, we started a podcast called An Atheist and a Rabbi, something. I forget exactly what the title was, but Eric has always accepted that I am an atheist and has never attempted to convince me that God exists, but has offered me like what wisdom he can from a Jewish perspective. And he has invited me to temple, and I have attended as an atheist. I have attended temple and have learned from what Eric, it's not preaching. What is it you do at temple?
I mean, if I give preaching, sermonizing,
it's a sermon,
leading
it's
services.
Yeah. But it's, you don't have to accept God to take something away from Eric's temple, or probably from most Jewish temples. Like I don't have a lot of experience, but like there's been an understanding. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you have atheists in your congregation, do you not?
Oh, 100%. And that's not atypical in Jewish communities either. And you know, the way I frame it, I mean, I could go on for hours about this. I'm not, I promise. To all the listeners, this is going to be very short. But you know, if you picture a Venn diagram with religion being one circle and God being one circle, there's definitely an overlap, but they are absolutely not the same circle.
Yeah, that's nicely put.
What's is it Elohim? What's the Jewish
word?
Oh,
Elohim. Elohim is one name. There's many, but that's
yeah. I come from the Church of Yahweh.
Right.
I heard
but
I truly hate to do this, but we have to read a sponsor.
Yes. Let's
We're
do it.
34 minutes in.
Oh,
but we can call it 30.
So this episode is brought to you by ZocDoc. Before you book any brunch, you pore over lists and lists of reviews. So why not do the same when you're booking a doctor's appointment? With ZocDoc, you can see real verified patient reviews to help find the right doctor in your network and in your neighborhood. After all, finding the right doctor is just as, if not more, important than finding the right plate of Eggs Benedict. ZocDoc is a free app that shows you doctors who are patient-reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them. On ZocDoc, you can find every specialist under the sun. When you're trying to straighten those teeth, fix an achy back, get that mole checked out, or anything else, ZocDoc has you covered. ZocDoc's mobile app is as easy as ordering a ride to a restaurant or getting delivery to your house. Search, find, and book doctors with just a few taps. Find and review local doctors, read verified patient reviews from real people who made real appointments. Now, when you walk into that doctor's office, you're all set to see someone in your network who gets you. Go to ZocDoc.com, find the doctor that's right for you, and book an appointment in person or remotely that works for your schedule. Every month, millions of people use ZocDoc, and I'm one of them. It's my go-to whenever I need a quality doctor. Go to ZocDoc.com/overtired and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then start your search for a top-rated doctor today. Many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/overtired. ZocDoc.com/overtired. Thanks, ZocDoc.
Ding, 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 ding. You know, something that I think is really amazing about being able to have compassion, especially as you were talking about it, Brett, like towards like your younger self, is that when you can do that, when you find yourself able to have that compassion, you're also bearing witness in a way that almost nobody else could. Like if you're thinking, I've had this experience recently looking at things when I was younger and finding some compassion for myself and understanding, or kind of making room for understanding what that experience was like for me, also ends up being that I serve as sort of a witness to it.
Define this term. Define bearing witness, because for me that's a loaded term coming from a fundamentalist background.
It comes from, I mean, it's absolutely rooted in a theological sense, right? Because it's the idea of bearing witness to suffering, bearing witness to, you know, what is true about somebody that maybe that person can't see, or bearing witness to a system that is doing something to people that, you know. So it really does have its roots, because the idea is like, if it's seen, then all that needs to happen can happen once it's seen, right?
Okay. Yeah.
It's my sermon for the day.
That's a good one. No, it is. And, you know, people forget too, forgiving yourself is as important as forgiving others.
Mm-hmm. That I have definitely learned. Like, the thing that has allowed me to move forward, like getting ADHD and bipolar diagnoses were huge for me. They gave me an understanding of why my life has gone the way it's gone. But the process of forgiving myself, the process, like even day to day, like you were talking about, like you have some free time and you feel guilty about all the things you don't feel like doing. And being able to forgive yourself, being able to find that compassion is what leads to actually doing something worthwhile. And from like a grand scheme of things, forgiving childhood me to like forgiving me for not feeling like doing this thing that maybe needs to be done. Maybe it's just an idea that I wish I could bring to fruition, but I just don't have the motivation. And finding that forgiveness really leads to actual like productivity.
And all, you know, I think I'm hearing my wife in my ear too. Like, it doesn't mean anything we do is okay. And like, you know, just like you could do anything and you're just like, it's okay. Just forgive yourself. But don't let that mistake be kind of, you know, use a biblical phrase from the Torah, be a stumbling block for the blind. Like, don't let that mistake stop you from then doing the right thing or doing better.
Yeah.
And that's really the key, I think.
That's nice.
Which, of course, is easier to say than to do. I mean, I say, rabbis often write the sermons that like they need to hear, and that is 100% true for me. By no means am I like preaching to you here.
I can tell you, my girlfriend is a yoga instructor, and she often leads the class that she needs for her body at that time. Can I tell you about my weekend plans?
Of course you can.
Sure.
So I've decided to start taking like foodie trips. I watch enough food shows. It's become like my new porn, is to watch like Hulu and Netflix food shows, and to really explore my palate. And I live in a small town. We have very few restaurant choices. We have some actually amazing sushi, considering we're in like landlocked fucking Midwest. We have 2 great sushi restaurants in a town of 30,000 people, but we don't have much else. And I have a lot of dietary restrictions. Like, I am sensitive to gluten and dairy. And if I eat either of those things, I end up, I pay for it. I won't go into details, but I pay for it. And I have decided to take like weekend vacations where I ignore my dietary restrictions and just plan to pay for them in the next week, and go to cities with like a lot of food options and just eat. And just for 2 days, just breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just find the best restaurants available and eat the food that I want to eat. I have some savings. Like, I've been working a corporate job for over a year now. I've saved up some cash, and I feel like eating is what makes me happiest. I appreciate a good meal in a way that is almost religious. And so my first trip this weekend, I leave today. I'm headed to Minneapolis. I have dates set up for Friday dinner, Saturday lunch, Saturday dinner, Sunday breakfast, and Sunday lunch. I'm still looking for a date for Saturday breakfast. But one of my stops will be Mr. Jeff Severance Gunsel. Yes. We have a dinner date on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I am very much looking forward to just like, I put it on Twitter. Like, if I came to your city, where would you take me? And I got a lot of feedback from people that are like, so I'm going to go to Portland. I think my next trip is to Portland because I am vegetarian, and Portland is considered the most like vegan friendly city for culinary arts in the country. And I could go to Portland and eat like gluten-free vegan the whole weekend and always have great food. But I'm finding even Minneapolis, which is just a 2-hour drive for me, is full of options.
We got your vegans, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, they ride really tall bikes, just like in Portland.
I'm going to be honest. I'm willing to cheat. Like, I've already decided I'm not going to worry about gluten and dairy. I'm going to pay the price for that. And when it comes to if there is a Cuban pork sandwich that is calling my name, I'm going to fucking eat it.
I got one for you in Athens, Georgia, Brad.
Yeah. These weekends are guilt-free. Eat good food, and good food may include meat. And I'm willing to cheat just on these weekends, which will not be a regular thing. And I would always prefer to eat meat that is ethically sourced. But that said, like, these weekends are a free-for-all for me.
I'll tell you where I'm taking you, because you say you don't mind, like, in your words, cheating. But if I don't want to be part of putting meat in you if it doesn't make you feel good. So there's actually this place called Trio Plant Based, and it's a Black run vegan soul food place. And I say
Perfect.
Black Run because in this town, if it's vegan soul food, it was likely to be white up until
Right.
recently.
Sure.
But it's just it is incredible. I'm not vegan. I was back in the day. I'm not vegan. I love this place.
All right, I'm in.
You're gonna love it.
That sounds amazing. There's Soul Veg in Chicago. Was the first vegan soul food I ever had, and it was before I was even vegan. I had Soul Veg in Chicago and was like, holy shit. Like,
I love a vegan restaurant where I'm like, oh, I'll go eat there anytime. I don't even think about the fact that it's vegan. No offense. I mean, it's cool, man. Vegan's cool. I don't ride with it anymore, but
so I am pescatarian. I just want to be totally honest. I eat eggs and cheese.
Yes.
And I will eat fish. So I am far from vegan. I am 3 points away from being an actual vegan. But given my my allergy to gluten and dairy, it's easiest to just say I'm vegan, because that automatically excludes dairy, and there's a lot of gluten-free vegan available. But yes, there's a breakfast joint in Minneapolis that I've forgotten. It's on the West Bank, Earth. But it was the first place I ever had like a vegan omelet.
Oh, I know what you're thinking of, and the name is totally escaping me. But yeah, I know.
And you can give any name you want to.
Yes.
And they will call it over this little loudspeaker system they have set up, and I would always give my name as You in the Bushes.
It's because hey, You in the Bushes. You're thinking of their dish, the like whole green earth or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And why I can't, friend of the show, Danny Glamour, worked there.
Oh, really? That makes sense.
Back in the day. That's a good place for vegan and also not vegan.
It may be where I go Saturday morning, Sans
That's
State.
right. Yeah, maybe we could talk Daniel into it.
If I can get someone to run Rosh Hashanah services, I'll come to Minneapolis.
You'll come. This has got to get a sub.
Okay. So Eric is coming to Minneapolis in December, and I will absolutely be coming to meet him, and we will get a meal. But awesome. I'm also willing to visit Athens, Georgia. I have had some great food in Georgia. Like my brother went to college in Savannah. And
amazing.
Currently lives in Atlanta, and every time I've been there, I've had great food. Is Athens near the coast?
No. And Savannah is actually one of the closest beaches, which is like 6 hours away.
Okay.
Oh man, it's that far from the coast. That's right. I forget.
I know. It's weird. My geography is horrible. I just know that's how long it took GPS to take us to Savannah.
Right.
All
well,
right.
Brett, I think that sounds like an exciting, it sounds like a year you're going to have going places and eating food.
I'm going to keep saving up money. I'm going to try not to dip too far into my savings to do this. But flying is expensive these days.
Yes, it is.
Even trains are expensive these days. So I got to kind of figure out the best way to stretch my budget to eat the best food possible without, digging into my retirement fund, I guess.
Brett, can I do a pre-gratitude?
Yeah.
It's to you. I have finally started creating How's It build notes in all of my repositories.
Yeah.
And in a few other places on my computer. And it's all been part of this effort. Brett knows this well, that I've had this kind of, it's almost like a nervous twitch that causes me to clean install my computer once every few months. Yeah. And usually what happens is I don't know what it is. I like going through the process of just kind of building things back up. I usually build some new system in the process, whatever, but it's very destructive overall to do this. And I think, and I believe, connected to my now medicated bipolar. So I haven't, this one was totally different, right? So I did the reinstall, but I'm building everything so mindfully. So Brett has this, I don't know, called a utility, which is called a tool, command line utility, a TT tool, called How's It. And it's just, classic Brett style. It's a plain text file that you put into some repository that involves you, say, I imagine it like this. it's a folder. It's a project that I go to maybe every few months. And every time I go to it, I have to remember some sequence of events to kind of get it running again, especially with the repository. I got to make sure the environment is ready, and do I have everything installed that needs to be installed, and have I configured, where I need to configure. And that can really, really freeze me up when it comes time to revisit a project, especially something like that lives in a repository, something that's sort of code-based and command-based, that kind of thing. And so this time, Brett, when I rebuilt my system, I just paused everything once I had all my repos in, and, I had successfully kind of gone through, I have web scrapers that run from my investigative work and stuff like that. So I kind of touched everything, and then I was like, all right, no further. I'm writing a house it file for each of these so that the next time I blow up my computer system, if I decide to, I can at least get to this point very quickly.
Yes.
And generally what I'm doing, because I don't believe that I can stop myself from wanting to clean install my computer. I don't know what it is. I've decided instead to just make sure that as I rebuild it, every time I sort of systematize it so that I kind of defeat this part of me that wants to just like knock all the Legos over. And I can just kind of build it back up again as needed. And then assuming that I can beat this thing where I'm constantly, knocking the Legos over, it just becomes useful and meaningful because it will be 3 months between touching a certain repository or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the ability to have, through a text file, create a sort of interaction, which is like, what part do you want to do? Do you want to set the environment? Do you want to run the script? Do you want to clean up after the script? Like, it's just been, Brett, it's been amazing. And so thank you for that tool as always.
Yeah. Yeah. the time that I write the most build notes is that first time I come after 3 months and touch a project and cannot remember how it works. And immediately I'll figure it out. And as I figure it out, I'll document it in a build notes file for house it in the future. But yeah, like you have to forget once before you realize how important it is to document. And then in the process of figuring it back out, you document what you figured out, and then you never have to do it again.
Yep. Yeah. And it's nice because like my process is I open up a build file and I just make a bulleted list of everything I needed to do. And then I just start writing it in your incredibly simple syntax. It's beautiful. So
I'm glad to hear it's serving someone else as well as it served me.
Oh my God. How's it? I love it. That's my deal.
It's like two standard deviations above my comprehension. The markdown tools, Brett's markdown tools are about my speed.
Yes. No, I relate to that. Like I've only in the last year, is this something that I'm even able to handle? You know what I mean? Like, so I've always like grokked Brett's tools, but then like, I wish I was doing the kind of project where I could use that.
Right.
But slowly but surely I'm getting there.
Should we segue into gratitude?
Absolutely.
First, we have another sponsor.
Oh, we do? Oh,
no, I'm just kidding.
You make a little joke.
I'm just making this up. Okay. This episode is brought to you by Atheist Judaism.
I have found...
There's another joke in there. Something will come to me.
Do you believe in God? No? Try Atheist Judaism.
In my world of, my wife went to seminary, so lots of friends who became pastors and the like. And then I come from sort of Minneapolis punk rock, so a lot of atheists in the house. I'm going to make an observation that I don't think is all that wild, but I was thinking about it as you were speaking with Eric, Brett, about atheists in the congregation, is that in my experience, if I am sitting with an atheist, I feel far further from that person who is, maybe preaching in a pulpit than I do from the atheist if I'm sitting next to the preacher in the pulpit. I think that sometimes the construct of atheism, which can be, I think in some cases very protective in nature, right? Especially if you've had religious trauma, and I am not saying this is what happened to you. I don't know, right? But I think it can sometimes make it feel that there's a thicker wall than there is. And I say that as somebody who is not any more comfortable saying I believe in God than I am saying I don't believe in God. So I'm not coming literally, I find myself in the middle of atheists and believers of some form or another all the time. And that's how it always feels. It just feels like sometimes the wall is a little higher because my friends who are atheist and they got to it after much harm.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've built this fortress called atheism that is fully understandable. Right.
Yeah. That's the thing is like my initial, like atheism absolutely was a protection. When it started for me, like basically this idea of God has hurt me enough, has caused me enough pain in my life that I refuse to believe in it. And over time, it has become a far more intellectual thing. Like I refuse to believe without evidence, and for fantastic claims, you need fantastic evidence. And it has become more scholarly. But yeah, absolutely. It was a defense mechanism at first. And in the process, like over the years, I have found great connection with people like Eric, and as well as like even Baptist preachers, like every kind of denomination. The clergy are the people who have actually questioned this shit and have come up with their own answers and their own justifications for believing. And I have always been able to have a conversation with clergy in a way that I cannot with the average parishioner. And it's like I can't connect with someone unless they have truly questioned the existence of God, the validity of religion. And if they have, and they have come to their own conclusions, I'm in. Let's talk. Let's we don't have to debate. Like, you're not going to change my mind. I'm not going to change your mind, but let's talk about experiences. And that's always been fruitful for me.
And, I have so much to say about this. I guess it would be weird if I didn't. Right. But, the first thing is, Jeff, what you really beautifully describe, it reminds me of, in many ways the power that clergy has, and in many ways destructive. I mean, I hear stories from people who want to convert to Judaism. Oftentimes it's purely from a theological kind of intellectual, spiritual place, but other times it is from, they came out as gay and got kicked out of the church, or all things like that. And so I wouldn't say it was a motivating factor in me becoming a rabbi, because thankfully I did have positive experiences. I mean, certainly nothing traumatic. But I'm reminded of that all of the time, of kind of the power of clergy, especially with younger people and things like that. The other thing, too, I think about a lot with atheism is, for me, this kind of litmus test. I think of the movie Contact, when Jodie Foster is not allowed because she doesn't believe in God. First, you have to define God to even make it a meaningful question. To say I believe in God and be like, "Oh, thank goodness they believe in God." Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Who's God?
Yeah. And, something I do with kids a lot, and frankly, adults too, is I ask the question, what kind of God do you believe in? And what kind of God don't you believe in? Because when I talk to people that, will describe themselves as atheists or diehard atheists or something like that, I'll say, well, what kind of God don't you believe in? And more often than not, that's the same kind of God I don't believe in. And then the last thing I'll say is, I respect Richard Dawkins a lot. I read a lot of, some of his science books before he became kind of this, the atheist spokesperson,
Poster boy. Yeah.
But, I call this new crop of atheists, and this might be a little bit tongue in cheek, but angry atheists. Right. And Brett, I don't see you as an angry athist. And as a matter of fact, I didn't coin this term. I heard Jennifer Michael Hecht, who's an incredible poet and author, use it. You can be a spiritual atheist without even question. Like, I don't think that I don't describe myself that way, but I absolutely think one can be, and one can find joy in religion and meaning in religion. And again, that separation sometimes of religion and God. And, Judaism specifically, there's without giving a full blown sermon right now, in the Talmud, there's this quote that's attributed to God that says, better they follow my laws than believe in me. And it's like, that says it right there. And it's, it's a little bit of a gross metaphor, but there is some truth in it. Otherwise it wouldn't exist Christianity is a religion of creed, whereas Judaism is a religion of deed. Again, there's so much to unpack there, but there's something to it.
So to any atheist of my ilk is technically an agnostic. We require evidence. We are willing to change our opinions based on evidence. We cannot disprove the existence of God. We just cannot prove the existence of God. So we refuse to accept what we cannot prove, but we do not discount the idea that if the correct evidence were presented, we might believe in a God. Whether we worship that God is, a question that remains to be seen. It depends on the qualities of that God, but we are technically agnostic, and we're not angry atheists. We are simply people who require fantastic evidence for fantastic claims. Yeah.
There's I don't normally just pull out Jewish theologian quotes, but there happens to be one that I've loved forever from Abraham Joshua Heschel. And it's something at the higher point of spiritual living is not to amass a wealth of information, but to face sacred moments. And I love that because for me, that pulls me right out of the muck of my own muck of what is God and what is, whatever. And it's just kind of like that idea of like recentering yourself around sacred moments and whatever that, similar to you, Eric, like you define what a sacred, for yourself, you define what a sacred moment is. And I like that as a sort of, I like those kinds of invitations into the in-between spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And Heschel's very good. For anyone listening, he's eminently readable, whether you're Jewish or not, whatever your belief system is. And
yeah, I think that book was The Sabbath. I think.
Yeah, I would imagine it is.
Yeah,
which is also very short.
I know exactly, right? That's why it's the one I know. I mean, the great thing about my wife being both a therapist and having gone to seminary is she leaves great books laying around.
I love that.
I think you found the episode title, Invitations to the In-Between.
That's right.
Also a good band name.
That is a good band name, actually.
Put that one in the notebook.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Graptitude. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I'm ready.
All right.
Mailmate. So there are so many email programs out there these days. You got your Airmail and you got your Spark and you got like every possible. And so many of them are beautiful. They're just like aesthetic pleasures to use. But if you want actual power, if you want actual smart folders, if you want actual filters, if you want actual keyboard shortcuts that are truly configurable, Mailmate is the way to go. And I am not only an owner of Mailmate, like I paid the one-time fee, but I enjoy it so much that I became a Mailmate patron and pay a monthly subscription fee. In addition, you can purchase it one time and you own it, and you can actually use it for free without purchasing it. He has very lax standards as to what a supporter is, but I am all in on Mailmate, and I pay monthly just to support the power. It's not pretty. It's not a pretty application. Mm-hmm. It's very much like if you imagine a Java app from like maybe 2015, it kind of feels like that.
It's prettier than that.
It is. It's not a Java app. It is. It uses it's a Cocoa app, but if you are, into the Airmail kind of aesthetic, you're not going to be pleased with it. Right. But like the trade-off for the power it provides, the kind of smart mailboxes you can set up using this app, the kind of filtering you can set up is above and beyond any other email application available. So my pick is MailMate.
I'm trying to open their webpage and it's hanging. Maybe so is everybody else.
It's that Java.
Yeah.
Two things I really love about MailMate as a user. One is just an instant thing you notice by accident, which is if you click on a subject in an email, in just the list of emails, it will immediately pop up a sub sort of folder of all of the emails with that subject line. And same if you just like double click on a person's name, you just get all their emails. It's like it's a really fast way to kind of get through the muck. And the other thing I do, which may make people choke out there, is about once a year I go through and MailMate has a way that I can just download all attachments from all mail. I put it into a folder that's very clearly labeled all attachments. And I have found that has saved me so many times when I'm like trying to come up with something I knew was in my email like 6 months ago, but I'm not quick enough in a meeting to search it. I can count on this weird folder that I should just have not indexed,
Right.
And it doesn't
extensions. It has bundles. Like if you were ever a TextMate user, you're familiar with bundles, and it has a whole bundle architecture. I've built my own. Plus, it has integrations with like Atom, BusyCal, Calendar, Eagle Filer, Fantastical, Lighthouse, MacVim, Sublime, OmniFocus, Pigments for syntax highlighting, VS Code. Like it can do it. It integrates with everything, and it's so much fun.
And it doesn't bother you that it's not on iOS?
So I use Spark on iOS.
Without a keyboard.
Right. So I don't use
Jeff, Brett and I had this whole text chain. Spark doesn't autocomplete email addresses if you're using a keyboard with iPad.
Oh my God.
Like you have to tap the screen. It's not ideal.
Wow.
But I don't use a keyboard with iOS. Like I barely use my iPad. I need the Spark on iOS. I can with a little finagling integrate it with the way that I use MailMate on my Mac, and it suits my purposes. If I were primarily an iOS person, it would be a lot more grating, but iOS is kind of an afterthought for me. I am mostly Mac, and I do most of my correspondence on Mac, and that's MailMate fits the bill. If you are an iOS heavy person and you do most of your correspondence on iOS, MailMate is probably not for you, and you're better off getting into an ecosystem like Spark or Airmail, something that
I've been begrudgingly
platforms better.
Using Airmail. Very begrudgingly.
You have? Yeah. I used it a long time ago, but I haven't tried it again.
But I really want to switch to something, but I there's nothing. And Apple Mail doesn't work for me either, even with the latest upgrades in iOS 16. Yeah. I'm not.
It's like there's everything and there's nothing.
There's an iOS Preside. Have you seen Preside?
No.
It is it's an iOS version of MailMate. Totally different. Like I just mean as far as like severity of aesthetic goes.
That's the new bar. I'm looking for severity of aesthetic.
but it offers a lot of like extra power that you don't get from other apps, but it doesn't work with my Outlook 360 account that I need for work, so I haven't gotten into it.
Painful.
But I will add it. I will add it as a subtopic.
Sure.
In the show notes. Anyway, that's me. Yeah.
Mine's boring, but it's what I've been spending most of my time in. It's PDF Expert is it Riedel, the pronunciation?
Not boring. Not boring.
Yeah. And I also they're from Ukraine, and I just kind of appreciate their messaging the past few months and everything. Yes. And even though Spark frustrates me, PDF Expert, for the high holidays, it's a combination of, we have a choir, we have a cantorial soloist, I have announcements, I have page numbers, I have readers, and I just took a photocopy of every page of the prayer book. It's a scanned PDF. It's in there.
Yeah.
I use my Apple Pencil on my iPad. I'm writing it up, who's reading what. And it makes me feel so much more at ease about the services coming up. And, I imagine there's so many use cases where, people having a PDF and being able to insert notes and things is just super useful. And yeah, it's great.
It's so great. You can export your notes, like whatever you've highlighted. And I've used it forever. I love it. It is boring. It's the best kind of boring. It's like,
that's right. Yeah.
It just is really sturdy, hardy, dependable.
Yeah, I even bought the Mac one, which is, it's expensive. It was like
I just did the same. The same. Yeah, it is expensive.
But yeah, and I love that it goes right into iCloud. Everything's synced. It's
Yes, definitely. Man, that's awesome. Mine is a command line utility called Grex, Grex. It is for regular expressions, which is not something I'm good with. But because I deal with a lot of data and a lot of like bulk text files in my investigative work, I always am looking for ways into the data. And what's cool about this, and I haven't found anything else, or I haven't encountered anything else that does it. So basically, if I wanted to borrow the band name Seagulls Screaming Kiss Her, if I wanted to come up with the regex kind of statement that would capture both that one and Flock of Seagulls, I would put those two things in quotes and just write Grex at the beginning of the command, and it would show me what regular expression would capture both of those things. So if I also wanted to put, I have a name, I have like a hyphenated last name. Sometimes it's Jeff Severance Gunsel, sometimes Jeff Gunsel, sometimes Jeffrey Gunsel. If I wanted to make sure I caught all of those, I would just type them on the command line with Grex at the top, and it would actually feed out what the regular expression is that I would need. Now, as Brett knows, it doesn't always get me all the way, because part of my contracting with Brett is like 10-minute regular expressions challenges. And so it doesn't always get me all the way there, but it's a fun thing actually just to play with and helps me a little bit to understand regular expressions better. So Grex, you can brew install it from Homebrew if that's your
it's a great way to start. Like if you know a little bit about regex, you can take the patterns that it gives you and really make them truly flexible. Like great. It's great at matching exactly the pattern or like the text you give it.
Yes.
But if you want to expand it to match a more flexible pattern, you need to know a little bit. But it's a great start.
For me, what I can do, here's the actual order. I can start there, then I take it into, there's a couple of web apps that you can use. There's something called Expressions as a Mac app that you can use to like put in text and then above it type in your regex to see if it captures it, so it's going the other direction. And so like I can go from there to a thing where I'm kind of tweaking it to try to capture text that I put in, and then from there I go to Brett. Like I'm
sadly Brett's not downloadable as part of a homebrew install.
Yeah,
not yet anyway.
This week, brew install Brett Terpstra. Yeah. This past week, I must have spent an hour and a half on this stupid thing, and finally, I'm like, I'm like, I build by the hour, I'm like, I should just really give it to the guy that can do it in 10 minutes. So anyway,
and I'm like a 1 on a 1 to 10 scale of expressions, but people non-programmers don't realize, like, you're searching email or Brett turned me onto Whodaspot to find files on my Mac.
Whodaspot.
So Grex might be up my alley. I'd not heard of that, but
that's like, for me, I'm like you, like, and in that I'm 0 to 1 at this, but it's like I know what it can do. That's like that's the first step of being dangerous, is knowing what it can do.
So true.
Anyway, this was super fun.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I hope Christina's feeling better, but I really appreciate being on here.
Yeah,
it's good.
It's been a blast. We'll have you back.
I would love it. And Jeff, we're gonna have to change trade PlayStation gamer tags and
yes, exactly. Yeah. That sounds good. Awesome.
Eric, do you know how we close out?
I don't remember.
All right.
Because I have too much high holiday on the brain.
Just play along. You ready?
I'm ready.
Get some sleep, guys.
Get some sleep.
The system is going down now.
Hey there, good people. Before you go, we have a bunch of new places where you can interact with us. Please check out our Instagram feed, our YouTube channel, Twitter, of course, and sign up for the Overtired newsletter, which will sort of pick up where the show leaves off, with expanded show notes, a little bit of what the three of us get up to between episodes, and let's face it, there'll be some musings. How can you resist musings? You'll find details for all the ways to interact with us in the show notes and at overtired.com. And thank you, as always, for listening.